Hello, fellow data privacy enthusiasts. Welcome again to our monthly community event for Keep Data Private. We have Marcel
Hiya.
and you have me, Daniela, to have a few thoughts on what's happening with data privacy at the moment. Do you want to start, Marcel, or should I give a quick intro of what I've found this week?
No, you can start. That's fine.
Okay, so the reason why I'm smiling when I say what I found this week is because I tried to find out how somebody who's not involved in data privacy would find out how to keep the data private. And most of the articles I have found, first of all, had the same content, the same 5 or 6 steps and thoughts. And secondly, a lot of those articles were published by somebody whose role, according to the profile, is marketing manager or business development manager or something along those lines. And whilst I don't want to talk down their expertise in the area, however, I would rather trust somebody who either has studied the area or has spent a considerable amount of time working in data privacy and or technology and or in the field of psychology that deals with social engineering. It's my personal preference. So why do I say that? Is because it feels a little bit as if a lot of those topics come from one paper, one article that was written a long time ago to talk about strong passwords. And yes, strong passwords are definitely part of the solution, but it's not everything. There is conflicting information. One of them said, well, log on to public Wi-Fi because less data is collected compared to cell phone networks, whereas other ones say don't ever log on to public Wi-Fi. So not only do a lot of these articles refer to the same 5 or 6 points, but if you look at one specific point, sometimes they contradict each other. So had I not read up on data privacy before, I would be rather confused on what to do now. Some of those points I tried to configure my mobile phone with, and I couldn't find it in my phone. I have a very standard phone, nothing extraordinary, but I just couldn't follow the steps either. So for anyone out there who is interested in data privacy and who has not yet had years of training, keep your mind open. Always, 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 when you read something online, think about, well, where does that come from? Who is writing it? Are the multiple sources stating the same topic? Why would it be that way? Do dig deeper, do look up where does it come from, what is specifically said and what is the reason, and then double check, triple check, quadruple check. Be cynical. Don't trust anyone. Literally, don't trust the company that sells you the phone to tell you how to keep your data private because sometimes it's not in their best interest. So think for yourself. Think first and foremost, and look at what can be done. All of those tiny little things, like a strong password, for example, help to keep your data private. But it's no longer as simple as have a strong password because there's a lot more to it nowadays.
Yes, I think data privacy, which is what we try to focus on here, is closely aligned, but it's different from things like security and anonymity. A lot of the things that you've been reading up on about your securing your phone, securing your computer, securing it, and that's why having a strong password comes up, because a lot of people don't have any password on their computer or in their phone. So it's about implying some security to stop anybody from being able to access your device. And there's a difference between preventing family members from accessing your device and from criminals or any skilled data thief from getting access to your data. So having a password on your phone and things like that, and not sharing your password, is similar to not sharing the PIN number on your bank card. It's a basic level of security which you'd want to make sure that you are the one that's in control of your device and you're the one that's in control of your bank card. And a lot of these things about not connecting to public Wi-Fi or using public Wi-Fi instead of is again around anonymity. Do you want to know who? Do you want the telecom or your IP provider or your internet provider to be able to tell where you are and who you are? And there was an interesting article the other day about a VPN, which was actually installing a backdoor to do crypto mining on your computer. A nice free VPN allowing you to connect to the internet with so-called security, because people say, VPN is going to provide you with security, but it doesn't provide you with security. It provides you with anonymity, in the sense that when you connect to the internet, you're connecting via another IP address. In other words, you're connecting to the internet from a different location, or at least you're masking a location by first connecting to your VPN provider, and then they connect you to the internet somewhere else. And this helps for that type of security that providers provide, where they say, you can only access this service from within your home country. And if you can have a VPN that can simulate you connecting from your home country, or if you want to connect to a service that's in another country, be able to simulate the fact that you're in another country. That's what a VPN provides. It doesn't provide you with security, it just provides you with a masking of where you are located. So that's a form of anonymity. And then we have the data privacy side of things, which is what we like to focus on, which is, how do you make sure that your data is private? And one of the key things is not giving your data to other people and letting them control your data and where your data goes and who can access your data. So there's different aspects to this, security, anonymity, and data privacy, and they all get bundled together, and people talk about them as if they're a single subject, and with some simple ways of fixing it, which is what you've come across when you look at things like having a strong password. And that, I think, is an area that we need to work on and help people understand what the differences are, and what is important, what isn't important, and at the very least, do some basic stuff so people, know that their phone or their PIN number is not shared with the world. So I don't know what you found when you were looking, whether that gave you that feeling that there was this difference between, security, anonymity, and data, privacy or data encryption.
The headlines, the words give me the impression that when they talk about data privacy, that's what they're talking about. I completely agree with your sentiment of keeping your data secure being one part, keeping it private as not sharing with other people is another part. And then there's the third part, that where data is outside of your own personal data is outside of your control. For example, there was talk about the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, selling data in order to, first of all, revenue money, and secondly, they put it under the guise of, we just want to have the analytics to know how to help people more. So it didn't matter whether your data was, or whether you were part of it. You were never asked for consent that data about you is being shared with somebody. And that's similar to some mobile phone companies that share your data with third parties in exchange for money, whether you like it or not.
And I think that highlights exactly what I'm pointing out, is that when, for example, data is said to be anonymized, we've anonymized the data, don't worry. There's a big difference between, whether your data has been shared or whether your data has been shared and they know it's your data, the anonymity aspect of it. And people also talk about de-anonymizing the data. How easy is it to actually work out whose data it is, just based on, the data, the metadata that's associated with the individual. If there's only one house in a particular street, for example, then having a street and with all the house numbers removed doesn't stop the data from being anonymized. I mean, I'm taking a very crass example, but people can very quickly narrow down, who the data belongs to, because the metadata is so revealing, because you have not only say a street name but no house number, or the number of members of a household, or all that actual metadata gets added to it, and your name may have been removed, your house number may have been removed, and things like that. But people can work out whose data it actually is just by looking at the data that remains, and so that's the anonymity of it. But none of that would be a problem if the data wasn't shared in the first place. And I think that's the separation. People are always worried about, I didn't give my permission for my data to be used. And the defense is, but the data was anonymized. Nobody's going to know it's your data. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Personally, I have issues with that, plenty of issues with that. But it is the world we live in. And the only solution that I can currently think of on the fly would be to simply not share information, not give information away, not give consent to have your information used as best as possible.
Yeah.
And it is really, really hard to do nowadays, given the reliance on digital tools and technology, which I am very much in favor, because it makes everyone's life better. It makes it easier, more comfortable, just better, in short. I mean, think back to the 70s. I don't know if anyone out there remembers the 70s or the 80s, but things weren't as nice back then. I remember them, some fond memories, but I do also remember that on occasion there was a drought and there was no water coming down the tap, for example. I do remember times when it was bitterly cold in winter time, and then throughout the whole country there wasn't enough fuel to keep everyone warm. Things like that happened back then a lot more often than they happen now. Progress is fantastic. I'm fully behind it. I'm looking forward to a world where robots and AI basically do all of our work for us, because then we can do whatever we want all day. Fantastic. And at that point, I still would like all of my data, all of my personal private data, to be private and to be mine. And that means we will need people to work towards it. And we will need people to come up with good, novel solutions for it. Yeah. And there are some people out there. So, Marcel, do you want to talk about that article you sent me earlier?
Yeah, it was interesting because it's called The Protester's Guide to Smartphone Security. And it comes from a website that has a lot of articles about, privacy, returning your privacy to you. And we'll just call privacyguides.org for those that are interested. And it's again, it's basic anonymity stuff more than anything. How do you make sure that if your phone is captured, if, for example, you had a protest, then police can hold your phone, what information they can get off that. But also the fact that your phone provides a tracking of who's actually at the protest. If they know their phone belongs to you, they can tell who was at the protest just by the phones that are in the area at the time. And they have various things about trying to provide some anonymity to yourself. Don't take your phone with you. Use another phone if you go to a protest and things like that. And my concern is that people look at this kind of information, and yes, it's all valid. I mean, I'm not criticizing the information itself. It's where's it coming from? What are people trying to achieve? If you get arrested at a protest, does it matter whether somebody can access your phone or not? It's no different to if your phone gets stolen. Can somebody access the data on it? What are they going to do with the data that's on your phone? Have you created a PIN number? Do you, etc. Can someone look over your shoulder and access your PIN? It was that kind of security. It's like, well, it's not really helping protesters, and it's not really providing anonymity other than just leave your phone behind, leave any form of identification behind, would be, for me, a far better advice, right, than everything else. They talk about the fact that people want to take their phones with so they can record the event, so they can have a video and things like that of the event. But then take a camera with you.
Yes.
You don't need to take your phone with you. Have another device. That if the phone or the camera, if the camera gets stolen, the camera is stolen. If the police take the camera off you, it's the camera that's removed. It doesn't provide any additional information about who you are. But does any of that stop the fact that when you get arrested, are you going to just plead ignorance as to what your name is and things like that? How do you think that normally happens when people get arrested? Even if you don't have your phone with you, and the concern I had with the article was about this. It talks about smartphone security from a protester's point of view, when a lot of the stuff should be applied to normal day-to-day usage, not just the protesters, and B, it wasn't actually focusing on what risks protesters face as opposed to just your average user. Where's the difference in the security going on? So it definitely, reading the article was like, yeah, it all seems like common sense. But B, then stop and ask the question, what are we actually trying to achieve here? What is if somebody wants to go to a protest and they read this article, how much security are they actually getting? And is it relevant to being a protest, or is it just average day-to-day security that you should be applying to your phone anyway? I don't know if you've had a chance to read the article.
I did read through it. I did try and change some of the settings on my phone, so I did. I didn't find all of them, to be honest. I do agree with you, thinking that everyone could and should take those suggestions to heart. There are other situations where the same privacy concerns happen. For example, if you go to a family planning clinic, for example, in the US or in plenty of countries in Europe by now, it may get you into trouble for doing nothing whatsoever. So, yes, I am. I am interested to hear from people what they do to keep the data private. Not necessarily in terms of if they go to a protest, which they absolutely should do if this is what they believe in. So if there are things that need to be protested, especially now that we live in times where public Heil Hitler salutes are a thing again. So I encourage everyone to go to protests, to protest for human rights, for peace, for not going down the fascist route again, for example. And that must happen, and if nothing else, just so that there are witnesses and historic records. Is the phone going to be the thing that breaks people? And like you said as well, why not use those suggestions on a day-to-day basis rather than only at the protests? And I completely agree with that. In general, given the times we live in, I would recommend to not share data. Simply don't put it out there. It is one, lock down what can be locked down. Read up.
Unless you choose to make it public. If you're
Yes.
publishing the data, then put it out there. But there's not the whole assuming that once you share it with an individual that it's not public or couldn't be made public is the false assumption that I think people work under.
Yes, there is this one saying that a word is like a bird. Once it's set free, you can't take it back. And this is a really good saying because it doesn't matter what you say. It could be a stupid joke. If it's misinterpreted, it can cost you your life in the worst case scenario. Just thinking about Mike Pompeo at this point in time, he has his security detail removed because Trump is a little bit upset with him, knowing that Iran has a bit of a target on his back. It is an extreme example, I understand, but it's similar for everyone, including myself. If I put the wrong message out, if I say the wrong thing, then somebody may come back to me with a negative response. Now, I'm unlikely ever to have a whole country after me because I'm not important enough, and that's kind of a good thing at this point in time. But wouldn't it be great if we all could say whatever we wanted without impacting somebody else? it's not here, it's not the world we live in at this point. So don't say anything, don't do anything, don't write anything that you aren't willing to have negative consequences for. So if you're willing to, for example, spend a night in prison for something you say you're right, then go and say and write it. 100% do it. If this is how you're inclined, then please do it, because it is very important that people create or co-create the world they want to live in, rather than just sit at home and complain about things. So please, I encourage you to create the world you want to see. I want to see a world where data privacy is taken a bit more seriously. So I'm making videos like these ones right now. I'm trying to find more time in my week to get a bit more information out and try and keep people safe. It's important, but be aware of the consequences.
I don't think we know what the consequences are. I think that's the other thing, is that, and this is what I keep trying to iterate, is that there's a difference between your data being private and nobody having access to it, only you have access to it, or you control who can actually see that data, and when they finish seeing it, they don't get a copy of that data, that you are the only one that has a copy of that data. They can, you can share it, but can keep control of that data. And B, data that is public. And I think data that is public forever.
Correct.
So it's an either or. It's not something balanced. And I don't think worrying about the consequences of what data you produce and make public is the deciding factor. I think we talked about this previously, where laws can change retroactively, and data that you made public in the past, which may have been perfectly legal back then, the laws change and now it's no longer legal. We were talking the other day about the DEI data and hiring practice, which were legal and now they're illegal. I mean, it's a policy that's within an organization. An organization can decide who they want to hire and when they want to hire it. Being told that it now would be legal to apply a policy that allows for greater diversity is now illegal. Is the way the law works. That the data has always been out there. The data is public. It's just the laws that have changed. And I think that's important to realize, that not to make a decision based on what would happen if I publish this data, because you don't know what will happen. You don't know what the law will be next year, right? Or whether it will be changed retroactively. If you decide to publish data, you decide to publish data, okay? Because you want that data to be out there, and that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what the consequences are or what the law is, because that can all change anyway. And I think that's the difference.
Yes, and I like the fact that you're highlighting the law, or bring the law into this conversation, because it's a very well, it's the best time really right now. Trump has taken office. The DEI, the Diversity, Equality and Inclusion Act, has been revoked, meaning that hiring is going to favor white cisgendered men again rather than everyone. Yeah, or that's the quick and easy conclusion to jump to. Let's wait how it is going to play out, and there are some companies that are holding their ground. Now, when I was talking about consequences, I was not thinking about the law. I was not thinking about legal aspects or any of that. When I'm thinking about consequences, I'm more thinking about ethics and morals. Can I live with myself? What are other people going to think, for example? If you're the only person who thinks that every person is equally a good person, irrespective of how much melanin their skin contains, then how would that have worked in apartheid South Africa, for example? Or 1939, 1940 in Germany? I don't know, but there are consequences to everything we do, and putting information out there will have consequences. I've had many hard conversations with people that took time to heal afterwards, because I have a different opinion, and my opinions are very strong, that I think every person should be equal under the law. Every person should be should have the same value as a human being. There shouldn't be anyone that should be higher up in the rankings just because of either skin color or gender or anything like that. There's going to be enough difference between individual people to not need this extra human-made differentiation. And just for saying that I believe every single human being on the planet has the same value for me, some people don't like that. I can live with that. The consequences are that there are some people who no longer speak with me. I can live with that. That's the consequence. I will not have Nazi friends, for example. I know people who are very much in favor of white supremacy. I don't want anything to do with them. I can live with the consequence. This is the type of consequence I'm talking about. And by putting my thoughts, and thoughts are also a type of private information about me, by putting my thoughts out, I know there will be consequences, and they have nothing to do with the law currently. Currently, at this point in time, if the law changes, my stance on equality is not going to change. I will always believe that people are just people. Everybody just wants a good life. Pretty much that's that. And that's why consequences. People need to be able to live with themselves. People need to be able with the impact their data has on other people. And there are impacts, and that's that. I'm trying to find a good example without oversharing. Oversharing being one of the easiest ways of getting into hot water with losing ownership over one's private data. So I will try and post one below. I will take a few days to think about it, but the consequences I'm talking about are not legal. They're simply about if you say something, you cannot take it back. Trump is an expert in saying, oh, it was just a joke. And it turns out it never was. And this is how I approach other people as well. If they say something, chances are it's not ever just a joke. Because they said it. They put it out there into the room to see what the reaction is.
Yes. I think that's a different point, but yes, I agree with you. I also will say that, the consequences that you speak of are the same. Either you want to publish the data or not. The consequences, you're not going to know what the consequences are. You're not going to know that if you share some private information with someone, how they're going to respond. You may think they're going to respond in a particular way. You may think that they will have a different opinion or an opposing opinion. And just by sharing that information, you find out they don't, or vice versa. You can share something that you think somebody would be agreed with you. And when you share it, you find out that they don't agree with you. Those are consequences, but the data has been made public, or at least shared with that individual in confidence. But once it's shared with an individual in confidence, they can also go and tell other people. So it may not always be in confidence anyway. But I don't think the consequences can be fully known in advance, and therefore, the decision to make data public is a decision that stands separate from the consequences. But I think this is a philosophical debate
Maybe.
as to whether you want to make data public or keep it private. But I think the key point is that once it's made public, it's public forever.
Yes.
And therefore, what's important is the data that you want to keep private, that we can keep that data private, and how do we go about it? What are the tools and applications and things like that we can use with confidence, and what are the impacts of certain companies and how they store your data, how that data gets made available, and how that data is exposed and stolen, and etc. etc. If you've given your data to someone else, you no longer have control over it. But I thought it was an interesting article, because a lot of positive things, in the sense that yes, this is what everybody should be doing anyway. But that did raise the question as to what is it about being a protester that's different? And it comes down to the consequences that we were talking about earlier. Being a protester in some countries is illegal. And certain countries allow protests and certain countries don't. And if you are a protester, people will know that you've been a protester, and you may go on some government list, for future knowledge, going forward. And I think that's more what people are talking about when they're trying to anonymize yourself when you go on a protest, because you don't want to end up on some government list. How do you make sure that your status at that protest is anonymous? Doesn't link you back to an individual that's has a day job.
True. Reminds me of many years ago taking part in the naked bike ride in London in the UK. Well, I think the name gives it away. No pockets for phones is all I'm saying. But yes, there were plenty of people taking part, but at the same time covering the head, covering the face, basically, not the head, but the face, making sure that they can't be easily identified. And that's whilst a slightly humorous form of showing the vulnerability of cyclists in a major city uh, does have some impact. And also, people get identified in pictures of that event. Yeah, be safe.
Yeah. And that, again, is the difference between anonymity and privacy.
Exactly. Do you have anything else for today?
No, I think it's an interesting discussion point. I'd like the discussion to continue. So if anybody watching this would like to continue that discussion, please mention it in the comments below, and or get in touch with us via the website, and it'd be good to hear what other people think.
Yes, I completely agree. Do right then, get in touch with us. If you have interesting points to talk about, again, get in touch. We can bring them up. If you're suggesting a specific point, obviously we will do our best to do research ahead of time so that we have some ideas and thoughts on what can and does happen in that area. Please support us also in case you want us to continue with these calls. We do have a Patreon account and also a Stripe for one-off donations. We'd love to grow this community. We'd love to contribute something more to this world, something better that keeps everyone just a little bit safer and more private, given that, technology is great, but not always private.
Sounds good.
Okay, and with that, I wish you good night or good afternoon, and we'll see
Good
you
morning.
next time. Bye bye.
Bye.